Hello and welcome to Titbeats. My name is Konstantin, and in today's episode I want to focus on how to create a subtle driving element for your melodic techno tracks. So let's get started. The element I want to focus on is the one in red that I call drive. I want to focus on note editing today rather than how to create a patch, but let me walk you quickly through what I've done so far. It's essentially just a very simple polysynth setup. The polysynth is playing a short pluck sound, and I added a bit of distortion and chorus to the sound. I've also applied two note effects, one note velocity that just gives the notes ever so subtly randomness, and a note filter that cuts out any note below 64 velocity. And we'll see where this comes in handy in a second. So let me solo the track so you can better hear what the element is doing. And now let's bring in the kick so we have a rhythmic reference. As you can hear, the element is pretty monotonous, playing a constant pitch, but there's still quite a bit going on. So let's take a look at the notes and see how we can recreate that. Let's throw out everything we have so far, loop a single bar, and start with a fresh clip. All I'm gonna do for now is add 4 notes. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to edit the velocity of these notes. I want to bring down the first one so it's actually being filtered out. And then I also want to adjust the other 3 just to get some syncopation going. Now let's duplicate those notes 4 times. So far so good, but that sounds really robotic. Let's use the note histograms to actually liven up the sound. And before we do so, let me quickly go back to the polysynth and explain how everything is patched. As you can see, I have an expression modulator, and the pressure is mapped to the envelope depth amount, and the timbre is mapped to the panning of the sound. And then we also apply some velocity modulation on the overall volume of the sound. So let's use the histograms to add some variety. The first thing I want to do is apply a healthy amount of chaos for the timbre. As you can hear, the sound starts to move around in the stereo field. Now as we start adding some pressure to this, we will hear the filter being affected. Now there's already more variety. Next, I want to play with the velocity, which will directly impact the rhythm, because as we inject chaos, notes that were previously filtered out can now become audible, and notes that were previously audible might drop out. So let's inject some subtle chaos. Let's go for one more round to see if we can come up with another rhythm. I like this one quite a bit. Now, we could simply copy this clip 8 times and leave it as is, but it gets really interesting if we copy it and then apply another round of expression chaos, just to have subtle variation going on in every bar. So let me duplicate this clip 8 times. And then select all the clips and inject a bit more pressure chaos. As well as a good amount of timbre chaos to have everything moving around in a more random fashion. And finally a subtle amount of velocity chaos. Now, no bar sounds like the other, and yet they have still a lot in common because it is such a simple sound. But that's exactly what we want. We want a subtle element that sits nicely in the background of our track and gives us a sense of urgency and motion and energy. So let me unsolo the tracks and see how this sounds in the full context of our track. Now there's one more modulator I set up that I quickly want to talk about. I call that one density. The density simply controls the cutoff point of my note filter. So as I lower the cutoff point, more notes will slip through and as such increase the density. So let me pull this up. And this is very subtle. So let me solo the track one more time and show you how the macro affects the overall rhythm. As you can hear, more and more notes start to drop out. Let me bring this back up and unsolo the track. And that is how you can use expression histograms to generate random rhythms and subtle motions in an otherwise very static and monotonous sound. Thank you for listening and see you next time.